We're coming from Pesach, and before that we had Purim, and this crisis covered both holidays, both months, the month of Adar and the month of Nisan, which are very positive months for the Jewish people historically. They're the best months on the calendar for us. So there's got to be at least a silver lining in all that is happening. So let's begin with Purim. When we read the Megillah, we're supposed to re-experience the event, the miracle of Purim. One of the telling and important insights in the story of Purim is, of course, that Esther went to the king to plead for her people, and she did this at great personal risk. So Mordechai asks her to go to the king, and he wants to inspire her to risk her life in doing so. And what does he say to her? What inspired her to go to the king despite the danger? So Mordechai said to her, the salvation for the Jewish people will come for sure. Of that, there is no doubt. So you're not going to save the nation, because the Jewish people will be saved one way or the other, because we're God's people and He's not going to let anything happen to us. But you are the queen. You didn't want to be, you were taken, you've been there for 10 years now, forced to play the role. Could it be that this is the purpose? This moment that you're in that position where you can go and plead for your people? If you miss that, you've missed the purpose that justifies your becoming the queen, your suffering at the palace, all of it. Can it be that for this moment, you became queen in the first place? And Esther went, which is kind of strange, because you would expect Mordechai to inspire Esther by telling her that the entire Jewish nation is depending on her, that the survival of the Jewish people is at stake. That's certainly worth risking your life for. And Mordechai intentionally tells her the exact opposite. Don't think you're saving the Jewish people. Why would he say that? Although it is true, of course, in fact, but let her think that she's saving the Jewish people. She's more likely to risk her life. So Mordechai says, no, don't even think that. No one is asking you to save the Jewish people. So what is it that is worth risking my life for? The purpose for which you are where you are at this very moment. It's an amazingly powerful message. We don't need to be heroes. We don't need to think global. We don't need to have dramatics. Every person finds himself in a certain situation, in a certain location, in a certain position, for a reason. And to fulfill that reason, to fulfill the purpose for which you as an individual, your soul came down into this world, to fulfill that little mission is worth risking your life, because this is what your life is all about. So Mordechai was saying something really, really powerful and profound. More recently, the chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Lau, the previous chief rabbi, former, He was an amazing man. You ought to read his book, Out of the Depths. He survived the concentration camps and became chief rabbi of Israel. Amazing, amazing. He tells a story that he was visiting with the Rebbe, obviously years ago. They spoke about the problems in Israel. They spoke about Jewish problems all over the world. And when they finished, Rabbi Lau said to the Rebbe, "Was it sein? What's going to be?" And the Rebbe said to him, rather than asking what's going to be, we should ask, what can we do? Rabbi Lau tells the story and quotes the Rebbe often when he speaks in public. Rather than asking what's going to be, let's ask what we can do. Every story with the Rebbe and every quote in the Rebbe's name deserves some commentary, some thought. Why is it necessary to say, don't ask what's going to be, ask what we can do? Why not ask what's going to be? Seems like a very legitimate question. Question that's on everybody's mind. What's going to be? So when I heard the story, my first thought was, the Rebbe tries to be positive, not get into negative, discouraging conversation. And what's going to be is not such a pleasant thought. Too many problems and so on. But then I thought, no, that doesn't sound like the Rebbe. Too pessimistic. So then I thought the Rebbe is being practical. What's going to be, we can't control. So let's talk about something we can control. What can we do to make things better? So that's practical. But it still doesn't explain why the Rebbe had to say, rather than asking what's going to be. The Rebbe could simply have said, let's better talk about what we can do. So then I thought, when you ask the Rebbe what's going to be, I can just imagine, I picture it clearly, what would the Rebbe say? If you ask what's going to be, what would the Rebbe say? No doubt in the world, the Rebbe would say, what kind of question is that? We know what's going to be. Mashiach is coming, the world is going to be good, the world is going to become perfect, there will be peace, and there will be togetherness and unity, and that's what's going to be, no question about it. So what are you worried about what's going to be? We know it's all going to be good. So now you might think, well, in that case, I can retire and just wait for it to happen. So the Rebbe says, no, there's still a question to be asked. And that is, what can we do to speed up the process? That sounds like Esther, or like what Mordechai said to Esther. The Rebbe is saying, don't become a hero and try to save the world and solve all the problems. And we don't need that. We're going to be fine. So then I don't have to risk my life? No. For the purpose for which your soul came down into this world, that you have to dedicate your whole life to. Your little contribution. That's the message from Purim. Now look what happened this year during Purim. We were told to stay home. You have to stay home. You can stay home with a big family, but you got to stay home. Or if you have no family, you stay home by yourself. Then Pesach came. You have to make a Seder. Alone. So everybody is asking, what is God trying to tell us? What is God doing? What does he want from us? We want to observe Pesach. We want to make a Seder, and we can't. What God is telling us is that he doesn't need large groups. He doesn't need impressive events, like most of Rabbi Pinny's events that are massive and impressive. Don't need that, because you're forgetting that Judaism is not a community event. Judaism is personal. It's you and God directly. And what you do matters to God, even when you do it by yourself. So we don't need large numbers of people. We don't need huge synagogues filled to the rafters. We need you to do a mitzvah. And nobody will know, and nobody will see, and there's no one there to do it with, and there's no one there to do it for, and nobody is going to check on you to see whether you're doing it or not. It's just between you and God. So God is telling us that at this particular stage in history, the heroics, the huge mitzvahs performed by huge people, giants of spirit, that has moved the world forward to where all that's lacking are a few finishing touches. We don't need any more heroics. We don't need great rabbis. We don't need prophets. We don't need kings. We don't need judges. We don't need sages. We need the mitzvah of the average Jew, performed privately, humbly, sincerely, to the best of their ability. I heard from people who are literally alone, completely alone, solo, in their apartment. And they were worried about how to make a Seder. First of all, they're alone. It's kind of strange. Make a Seder by yourself. Secondly, they've never made a Seder. They've always gone to public Seders, to the Chabad house, to the synagogues, to the Zaydis, to the Bubbies. So they don't know how to make a Seder. They were worried. What kind of significance, what kind of meaning could their awkward Seder possibly have? But after Yom Tov, they called and said, it was amazing. I was alone, it was lonely, and it was awkward, but I felt significant. I felt like I mattered. Somehow they felt that God was present, interested, and getting pleasure from their amateur attempt at making a Seder. As if God was saying, this is exactly what I want. I just want you to do a mitzvah for me. I asked you to eat matzah, and you're eating matzah. And I asked you to eat the bitter herb and the 4 cups of wine, and you're doing it. Not comfortably, not confidently, but you're doing it because I asked you to. This is absolutely awesome. 3,000 years ago, God asked us to do this, and here we have Jews doing it. We said we would, and we still do. It's beyond description. And we needed to be reminded because Judaism had become too much of a synagogue event. We needed to be reminded that, as the man said, God has no grandchildren. Isn't that sad? He's certainly old enough to have some grandchildren and great-grandchildren, but he doesn't. I have grandchildren. He doesn't. Because my child is not his grandchild. I am his child, and my child is his child. In other words, my children are connected to God and related to God, not through me, directly. They are as much God's child as I am, and I am as much God's child as my father was. This is a very powerful and important lesson. Stay home, because the mitzvah you do to the best of your abilities, with a little sincerity and with a little devotion, is as perfect as it can get. Now, Pesach, we celebrate our freedom. We came out of slavery. This year, because of the virus, we were again taken out of slavery. The slavery of habit. I'm sure you remember when we first learned that we're going to have to be home, locked down, which is not a nice expression. We panicked. People were panicking. Locked into the house with our children for 24 hours, we're going to go crazy. The kids are going to go crazy. It's not possible. We were really seriously concerned. And couples who maybe don't get along so perfectly, we're now told that they're going to have to be in the house indefinitely, 24 hours a day. They panicked. The thought was terrifying and uncomfortable. Now, tell me, is this a way to live? The thought of being with your children an entire day is uncomfortable. Being in a house together with your wife and husband without distraction and without break is not a pleasant thought. Look at how wrong-minded our lives had become. I mean, looking back at it, I find it really embarrassing. We were actually living like this for years. Got to get away from the house, got to get away from the kids, got to get away from each other. We need a break. This is too much. And we thought that was okay, that was normal. Now, looking back at it, it's hard to believe that we actually thought like that. Thankfully, the good news is families love being home. I hear it all the time. The children love it. They enjoy being with each other. They enjoy being with their parents. Parents find it like an enlightened new lifestyle. It's nice. And the couples who thought they were at the verge of a divorce, all of a sudden they see each other differently. They're grateful to have each other. They're starting to look good to each other. This is amazing. So much good. And the habit has been broken. We have been released. We've been taken out of slavery. Should we think of going back when this is over, to going back to our previous lives? Going back to a life that consisted of travel, shopping, entertainment, sports events, work, anything to get out of the house. We want to go back to that? We want to go back to a world in which business was tense, created tension and anxiety and depression, and we needed to have pills to keep us going, and the competition and the greed and the materialism, it was eating us up. But we thought that was normal. We were enslaved to it. We want to go back to that? Don't think so. I think we want a better and nicer world. We've learned that those things are not where we live. We live at home. All of those things are perhaps a commentary on life, but they're not life. Life is what happens at home. We are wiser, we are more mature, and we're more moral. We don't want to go back. We want to go forward, we want to go upward to a much more meaningful life where the center of your life is your home, and when you leave the home, you're simply doing it to support your home. You go to work because you got to feed your family, or you got to feed yourself. But having a career is not another life or an alternative life. Okay, here's a quick story. You may have heard this. This guy says to God, I'm so frustrated. I'm so confused. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no life. I have no life. I'm down to $20. God, give me a life. God says, all right, give me the $20 and I'll give you a life. The guy says, but if I give you the $20, I won't have money for gas for the car. God says, oh, you have a car. Give me the car and the $20 and I'll give you a life. The man says, but if I give you my car, how will I get to work? God says, you have a job? Give me the job, give me the car, give me the $20, and I'll give you a life. The man says, if I give you my job, how am I going to pay the mortgage? God says, you have a house? Give me the house, give me the job, give me the car, and give me the $20, and I'll give you a life. And the man says, but if I give you my house, where's my family going to live? God says, you have a family? Give me your family, give me your house, give me your job, give me your car, and give me the $20, and I'll give you a life. And it sounds a little bit like the Chad Gadya. So he does. God says, okay, good. Now, here's $20. Here's a car. Here's a job. Here's a house. And here's a family. See, now you've got a life. What we have learned as a result of this quarantine, I don't want to give the virus the credit, but the quarantine gave us an insight into who we are and where we live. We forgot that we had a life. We were so busy making a living, we forgot that we were living. We spent so much time supporting our life that we forgot to live. It's lopsided and top-heavy. There's far more commentary than there is text. We have a life. And it's our life. Your life is your life. You are exactly where God needs you. Whether you're with the family or alone in the house, whether you're young or old, whether you're strong or weak, whether you're rich or poor, it's exactly the way God needs you. And when you do a mitzvah and you eat a piece of matzah on Pesach, It is exactly why you are here, why you live in this century, why you live in this decade, why you lived through this experience, and why you were doing this mitzvah at this time in your way. There are no coincidences. This is exactly where we need to be. And the fact that we're doing it is so awesome that even God is impressed. This is a preparation for Mashiach. Because briefly, what are we expecting? What's going to happen when Mashiach comes? Oh, everything's going to be great. The world's going to be good. Everybody's going to be nice. What kind of a miracle are you expecting? And we don't rely on miracles. And Mashiach is not about miracles. But how is that not a miracle that the world will suddenly become good? So one way of thinking about it is, the world is messed up. We know that. The world is a world in golus, in exile. Because when Jews are in exile, the whole world is in exile. What does it mean to be in exile? Having a lot of free time, being alone with yourself, really forces you to get to know yourself. It's like being in a house of mirrors. Wherever you look, you see yourself. And you get to know who you really are. You see things you don't like in yourself that you never noticed. You see things that you admire in yourself and you never noticed. But one of the things I've discovered is that I want to be a lot better than I am. And I think it's true of most people. My ideal of what I should be is much greater and much better than what I am in fact. I know what I should be. I know how I should perform and act as a Jew, and I want to. I've wanted to for 30 years. I'm just picking a number, right? And yet, year after year goes by, and it just doesn't happen. And don't blame me for being lazy or for being of two minds. Yes, I want to be good, but I also want to be lazy or bad. I know that's the problem, but it's a problem. And the result of this problem is that my potential doesn't become reality. Isn't that what Golus means? Golus means the people of Israel, the children of Israel, belong in the land of Israel. Right. But we're not. We're not there. And those who are there are being told by the whole world that they shouldn't be there. It doesn't belong to them. They should get out. That's Golus. That's a messed up world. What should be, what we know and agree to and want, doesn't happen. That's crazy. That's crazy. What is Mashiach? Mashiach means the world will grow up. The world will heal. The effects of eating from the tree of knowledge, where everything is confused, the good is also a little bad, and the bad is also a little good, that's going to end. And what's going to happen? I will be what I know I should be and what I want to be. That'll be a vast improvement. If everyone would just be as good as they think they should be, in some cases, as good as they think they are, if you would be as good as you think you are, you would be very good. So it's not a miracle. That the world will become good is not a miracle. We've all been thinking about it. We've all been wanting it. We've all been yearning for it. It's strange that it didn't happen. That's unnatural. But for us to be what we want to be, why is that a miracle? That's just natural, right? So if we're looking for a silver lining, we have more than a silver lining. We have pure gold. Final thought. People who passed away from this pandemic didn't die because there's a pandemic, because there's a virus raging. No. People die when they're meant to die, when they're supposed to, when their lives are completed, their mission is complete. That's how and why people die. What is written on the death certificate, cause of death, is really quite irrelevant, except for doctors and hospitals. Death is terrible. No death is acceptable. Doesn't matter what the cause was. So we have to be careful not to become callous, like some people are already starting to think. What did he die from? Oh, it wasn't corona? Oh, okay. But those deaths are not tragic. People are saying, it's out of control. It's out of control. We have no idea what's going on. And then you get all these experts making predictions. It's going to last this long. It's going to last that long. It's going to take these many lives or that many lives. And then at the same breath, they admit that they have no idea what this thing is. The question is, these people who passed away as a result of through this plague, nobody is saying Kaddish for them. Because we don't have a minyan, because we're not going to the synagogue. These very, very special people, they of all people are not going to have Kaddish said for them? That's quite shocking. But that's only if you think negative. If you think with a Hasidic perspective, what God is telling us is that these people don't need Kaddish said for them. And that's why the circumstances don't allow it. But they are not being cheated or denied what they need. They don't need it. There's something special about them. They don't need Kaddish said. This is awesome. How holy do you have to be that when you pass away, you don't need Kaddish to support you and accompany you in the transition from earth to heaven? Only the biggest and the greatest tzaddikim in the past had that quality. So here's what we should be looking for. We're not going back to business as usual. We're going back to a better world. We're going back to a world that is no longer confused about good and evil. Evil can exist only if it charades as good. Every lie becomes believable if you add a little truth. Without that little bit of truth, the lie would never fly. Since the eating of the tree of knowledge, every good has a little bad and every bad has a little good, and that's how they both survive. But if you separated them, if they became distinct, bad is pure bad, good is pure good, what would happen? The world would be pure good. And what about the bad? It would shrivel up and disappear, because without a little bit of good, the bad cannot exist. It's very much like a virus. A virus has no life. Bacteria have lives. A virus has no life. It's a parasite. If you don't allow it to feed on the good, it can't exist at all. So the moral of the story is this. You're going to see in the next couple of days, next couple of weeks, how evil becomes pure evil. Obvious, blatant, unacceptable. And good will become pure good. And therefore, we have to become more enthusiastic about life. We have to become more passionately alive, because when a virus or a parasite is looking for a host, they need a way of getting past your defenses. If your defenses are strong, the virus can't touch you, can't get to you. If you're fully alive, this dead thing finds no welcome, finds no port of entry. It can only enter if there's a little bit of lifelessness in the person. So if a person is already what they call compromised in their health, or is pessimistic, or defeated, or panicked, that allows the virus access to the living part of you. But if every part of you is alive, it can't touch you. So we have to be really careful. No pessimism, no defeatism, no panic, no fear. The opposite. We really love life. We want to live fully. We want to live to the maximum. And we're not going to let this thing sap us or drain us of any life at all, because that gives it life. So look forward to a much better world. Plan to make the world a little better with your contribution. Don't underestimate a microscopic mitzvah, because look at the power of a microscopic evil. This tiny little thing that we can't even see shakes the world. A tiny mitzvah does more. They just don't get the headlines. So do a tiny mitzvah every day, a few times a day. You put a coin, insignificant, nothing impressive, nothing heroic. You put a coin in the pushka. You make a bracha. You make a phone call to somebody who you haven't spoken to in a while, just to see how they're doing. It's not hard to imagine that that can save a life. So, silver lining, pure gold. Pure gold. If we just keep your eye on the good stuff and don't be intimidated by the negative. We're going to have a much better world than we've had before. We're not going back to the old stuff. We're too mature now for that. We've been sobered. We've wisened up. We know there's got to be more to life than those routines that we used to call life. So we're going to be better to each other. Businesses are going to have to support each other mutually so that it really is win-win, because there's no other way to run a business now. We both don't have money. The buyer and the seller both don't have money. So how is it going to work? It's going to have to be a different kind of business atmosphere. We got to go to work every day, not just to make money, but to see who we can help, who we're going to meet, and what we can do to make the world better. It's not enough to live long enough to see Mashiach come. You have to be able to say, I did something to help bring Mashiach. Be a participant, be part of the solution, not a spectator, and certainly not part of the problem. So it's an exciting time. We were chosen to be the generation going through this really confusing and challenging transition generation. 1 foot in exile, 1 foot in Geula, and now we got to drag the foot in exile into the Geula and make the world what it's meant to be. Let's do it. Little things, but that's what we're here for. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks, Pinny, for the opportunity. And like you say, next time we should meet in person, where we can actually dance and celebrate face to face and bring all of our little contributions together in one big party. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Friedman. That was really inspiring and great. God willing, we'll be doing many more programs like this, and God willing, you'll join us again. I just want to remind everyone again, first of all, thank you all for joining. At one time tonight, we hit 290 participants, which is truly tremendous and a great way to start off. As I mentioned, next week, we're going to be having Rabbi Shalom Lipsker, the rabbi of the Shul of Bal Harbor, the founder of the Aleph Institute, who recently recovered from the coronavirus. And he will be talking about second chances, connecting it to next week's festival of Pesach Sheni. I want to dedicate tonight's lecture to all those who are battling the virus and need a complete and speedy recovery. In Florida, namely, we have Mordechai Yehuda Leib ben Rivka and Chaim Aaron ben Florence. And I know there's unfortunately so many names, too many to list here, but each and every one of them should have a complete and speedy recovery.
Amen.
And if you want to sponsor any of the future lectures, go to chabadswb.com. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, and God willing, may we only be able to take Rabbi Friedman's inspiring words and implement them into our life. And God willing, our life should be truly filled with blessings and simcha. And again, may we merit to only experience good, share good, and hopefully the ultimate good of the coming of Mashiach, where we will truly be able to live in true peace and harmony and good health with the final redemption speedily in our days.